Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming and spending your Sunday afternoon with us. We're here for the artist talk between Joscha Steffens and Stephanie Misa. I'm Patrick Flores, the curator of Oculus. I want to introduce the artists. Their biographies are in the brochure. Joscha works between Heidelberg and Amsterdam, and Stephanie works between Vienna and Helsinki. Maybe when first, to begin this conversation, I'd like to, for Joscha and Stephanie to walk us through what they did for this exhibition, to briefly describe the projects they initiated for this particular exhibition, Oculus. Yeah, maybe Joscha.
Welcome everyone here to Heidelberger Kunstverein, to our exhibition Oculus. It's nice to see so many people here on a Sunday. And I will just start here because we are sitting in between this 3-channel installation that I developed for the show. And it's made out of a 2-day improvised shooting in the forest at Mount Banahao with a community from Kinabuhayan. There is another piece of me inside the pavilion that Stephanie made, the outside work. There is a sound installation inside also. And you can also find works from my research in the Philippines in the 3 folders on the research table that are there, so you can open them. There is an aubergine color, blue and green. And you can find all 6 interviews with the communities that I did there, and a lot of visual research around Rizal and inscenation in public spaces. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm Stephanie. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon with us. And the works that I did for this exhibition are this hanging glass piece that you can see from here if you turn over. So that is in reference, of course, to the residency research that I did here in Heidelberg with the Augenklinik. And we were taking apart the Augenspiegel as sort of a reference also to this show. So that plays a lot with references here that you see around us. And I made this little tropical pavilion, is what we call it, that extends from the atrium to actually the back garden, which is a little bit of a steam room. I hope you enjoy it. Where it's this quite a liminal space where you can actually just stand there and listen to Joscha's audio installation, if you can stand the heat and humidity. And this research table was also another one of our collaborations where, so the ophthalmoscope that you see in there is actually Helmholtz's original one that we borrowed from the Augenklinik here in Heidelberg. So those are original vintage objects. And yes, and I did interfere with some of Joscha's folders, so you will see some of my research in there too. Yeah.
So it seems that research really was an important part of this, the formation of the project. So I'm sure the audience would like, or the public would like to know the process of this research. Like Joscha went to the Philippines for 6 weeks, right? Was in the Philippines for 6 weeks to do research on Jose Rizal, the Philippine national hero, and Stephanie was here in Heidelberg for around the same time, period of time, to research on the stay of Rizal in Heidelberg, to study ophthalmology with Dr. Becker, no? With Dr. Becker, yeah. We begin with Stephanie.
So yes, so I was in your lovely city for a good 6 weeks. I was living in Neuenheim at the Max Planck house over there to actually have access to the Augenklinik, which was in the Kopfklinik. So I have to say thank you really to the Augenklinik because they really welcomed me. The director, Professor Gerhard Auffahrt, especially was very instrumental with my research there. So within the eye clinic, they actually have this quite a huge archive of all of these medical journals that they've studied from, like the earliest I think was 1820s when they started publishing journals of medicine. And this was around the time where I think the specialization of the eyes came around. And Heidelberg is actually renowned for being one of the first places to specialize in eye medicine and to actually establish an Augenklinik, which is why our national hero of the Philippines, José Rizal, which the show is actually circling around, came to Heidelberg to specialize in eye medicine. The story is that his mother was suffering from cataracts and was losing her eyesight, so he really wanted to learn breakthroughs in eye medicine to help her regain her sight. And Heidelberg was one of the places you could specialize in that. So he apprenticed with the then director of the Augenklinik, Otto Becker, who Dr. Auffahrt then follows the lineage of, like being these directors of the Augenklinik. No? And one of the things that was very intriguing for us, well, Joscha got kind of roped into my research too, because he was here, so unfortunately. I needed someone to talk to. Was the ophthalmoscope, because this ophthalmoscope that we know today, this handheld instrument, was actually only invented in 1851. Before that, there were other versions of this instrument, but not as handy and not as precise as the one that they still use today. So you can see how very handy it is with the size of it there in the vitrine. But it allowed the doctors to actually see into a living eye for the first time and not have to see it on a dissection table. And so this really then kind of catapulted eye medicine to other levels. Because suddenly they could see the back of the eye sac and see how cataracts were connected. So it was a very intimate way of viewing. So it was quite a whole change of perspective into having to see the eye from the outside to being able to see the eye from the inside. And so it was this metaphor that we kind of played around with, like if something as tiny and beautiful as an ophthalmoscope can change perspectives and catapult medical science, like leaps and bounds, like could it have been the same for José Rizal, who being in Heidelberg also had a switch in perspective that made him a more political being, who kind of then had him rethink the idea of nation and what that could be for the Philippines, who at that time was a Spanish colony and was experiencing already like little bursts of revolution, but wasn't able to organize in a way. So it was all of this, like the inquiry into the scientific method and the inquiry into this political thinking that kind of resolved in this exhibit that you see around you. So this huge glass piece is kind of that, where we wanted to be able to distort a way of seeing in a way. So as you can see, it's like mouth-blown glass. Nothing is really quite straight. Everything's a little fuzzy. It kind of looks like plastic somehow. There's a foggy room where you don't really see anything when you walk in. So there's really this play of like seeing and vision and feeling. Like if there are other ways of seeing that are available to you that's not from eyesight. Yeah. So that was kind of what my research was about.
I have one.
Okay, sorry.
To me, it was. I had the difficult question how to approach this person, or how to approach this myth, or how to approach this hero. And I had like I tried to, like, also my background as a photographer, I tried to break it down to a visual level and really wanted to go and see what is the representation, what is the visual representation of José Rizal, and try to find as many of the statues, try to find as many of trying to find something there that could explain me why this person is so big, as you say, becomes the national hero. And also, for me, it is interesting why do we need heroes, and why do we choose for certain ones to be heroes and for others not? And so in this in the time in the Philippines, I visited many places. I started with Luneta Park, which has the biggest monument and has the big celebrations for Independence Day that I could attend also. And this was something that I would have not expected. It was very overwhelming. So the size, the whole scale of the inscenation, and also seeing the highest political representatives coming and honoring this writer. And my stay also, it was very, very intense, the weeks there, and thanks to the organization of the NCCA, it was possible to access the National Archives, to touch the original scripts, to really see unpublished works, to find a lot of materials that are in a way sacred, I would say, and seeing these archives and the writings, to me, where I had the feeling this is the closest approach I can get to him. So like this experience, not the myth, but experiencing the real writing. So that's, I think, one of the fascinating parts, that we can read his books and that we can, through this, get maybe closer to the person that he was, or also try to find out what is the meaning behind it. And so beside statues, beside archives, beside meeting a lot of representatives that are honoring him, it was another trail to go to different communities in which he is not only representing a hero, but he is representing a religious figure. So sometimes it's a saint, sometimes he's a representative of, let's say, a reborn Christ. And there are many layers in these communities. That there are Rizalian communities, there are Rizalist communities, and there are Rizalista communities. And during the interviews we did, I learned a lot. And during one of the interviews that got interrupted by an abrupt prayer that needed to happen at 6 o'clock. And afterwards I thought we're going back to the interview, and then a dance ceremony started. And I was like, okay, that's visually very good. I mean, I have to get my camera here. And after that I asked them, don't you have a theater group maybe also? And they said, yes, of course, we have a theater group. And this is where the project started that we see here. So this collaboration was a bit, by chance, by luck, that our interview got delayed and we got into this ceremony. Otherwise, it might not have happened. But for me, again, then working with this theater group from the community became very interesting, because they are reenacting Rizal's writing. So what we see here is the last chapter of his book, Noli Me Tangere, that he supposedly has finished in Heidelberg and reworked. So this was another access point for me.
Thank you, Stephanie and Joscha. So now that you have walked us through the research process and also the translation of the research into visual form, I'm sure that we are all interested in how that translation into visual form individually would become an exhibition. So in terms of the scenography of this room here at the basement of the Kunstverein, how did you think of the relationship between your works to form an exhibition, an integrated exhibition that is called Oculus? So what was the process of artistic interaction to produce an exhibition?
A lot of talking, a lot of conversations. I think from the very start, well, Joscha and I didn't know each other at the beginning. Patrick actually introduced us. And so it was very new, right, this, this collaboration. But we knew from the start, I think, that even though we wanted to produce individual works, because we were going through very different research journeys individually, we wanted our works to intersect, to have like an organic connection. Like the initial thought was to actually have Joscha's film be shooting through the portal. We call it the portal, this glass piece, and be refracted and deflected into this darker studio space. It didn't work. Logistically, we couldn't make it happen. But if you were at the opening last night, what we did was we shot a beam, just basically like a spotlight through it. And the light did kind of work in this way, where at one point you had the beam kind of like around this part here, so framing this screen of Joscha's. So yeah, we had many different ideas coming into it. Like this research table was another one that kind of organically happened, where we wanted to build a table especially for the research, like not just like a flat table that you could buy anywhere, but one that actually integrated the different pieces of our work in it. So that was another way to kind of just point at this being like a collaboration that actually required fitting in and intersecting and making space for each other. Yeah. You can add to that now, yeah?
Yeah, to me, also thinking about the exhibition and thinking about the ophthalmoscope, and this was a key to our collaboration, I think, so that we use light, that we use lenses to intertwine somehow these different researches, and to bring it into one show that is not separated but working with each other, and that we would get so close with the research table or also in the tropical pavilion that the works are really like merging. It was a very nice process. I'm also very happy with it now. And coming from all these ideas and then seeing it happen in the end was a great journey.
I mean, I think also like to try to connect our different experiences in very different places together was another thing that joined this, because Joscha had quite the experience in the Philippines, and to me, I'd never been to Heidelberg before this research trip as well. So even though I live in Vienna, you know, it's still a very different space than Heidelberg. So to be able to also put a sense of place to both our researches and still have it touch at the tips, you know. I mean, Rizal, of course, was kind of the underlayer to all of this, but to have it talk to each other, I think, was something else too. Yeah.
Yeah, but other aspects of like other points of contact in the exhibition would be like the sound, right? Because there is like, you perceive a certain ecology that is happening in the space. You have like sound is an element, and I think it's common. There is sound here and also sound in the tropical pavilion, right? And there is also the element of the soil, right, that you see in the tropical pavilion and also here in this space. So what brought about this, this production of like stimuli in terms of sound and soil to become some kind of connective tissues, no, for both of your works?
I kind of hinted at it also in the beginning with the ophthalmoscope, that we wanted to kind of find other ways of seeing other than visual. So then we wanted to then kind of trigger also the sense of hearing and the sense of smell. So we were hoping, especially I think when you're in the tropical pavilion, like the soil, the wet soil smell becomes very present. Maybe not here as much. But yes, we were really looking to find ways to also, Maybe with Joscha's folders, the sense of touch then, because I really love running my hands through that linen cover. It's really quite a nice thing. So yes, there was an actual point of really wanting to also trigger other ways of feeling and seeing and hearing, like just other senses in general.
I don't have anything to add, I think, at this point.
Yeah, the intersection or the contact zone of this exhibition is, of course, the national hero Jose Rizal, and so, in the spirit of contemporary art, the contemporary artist tends to like, demystify, right? What is official or normative, or what is seen as like an object of desire. In this case, Jose Rizal. But did it occur to you that it was also necessary for your works to demystify Rizal, to not really dismiss him or critique or negate the heroic status, but maybe to reconstruct Rizal in a new light through your work and also through your research? Because Rizal is, too big of a person in the Philippines. Everyone reads the novels because they're required in schools. And he's, of course, a national hero. And he did a lot of things. He was, of course, a patriot, but also a writer, a scientist, a polyglot. He was a polymath. He did a lot of things. And so he's like larger than life, and also seen as a religious figure, as in some religious communities, as Joscha has mentioned. So it's right. It's like a master narrative in Philippine history. But you deal with him in a new context. So was there some kind of project to also demystify Rizal through contemporary art?
I think to me, it's looking from the German perspective on him. It's I had to mystify him first to get a picture what is happening, and this was essential to go to the Philippines to get this view. And I don't think that I tried to deconstruct the image. It was more like trying to make a puzzle out of it and bringing it together to a new image that makes sense to me and that feels somehow justified to what I experienced. But it was not my attempt to deconstruct or demystify. It was more like trying to dive deep into the mystification that happens.
Okay.
Two mics.
As a Filipino.
Yes, as a Filipino, I grew up with this myth of Rizal. So he was always larger than life to me. Like I had to read Noli Me Tangere in high school. That was required reading. His monuments, like his statues, are everywhere. Like almost every high school has a Jose Rizal bust, right? National hero of the Philippines. So to me, like my connection to Rizal actually was more his journey abroad, Rizal as the immigrant. Because when you read a lot of his letters to home from Heidelberg, it was about like finding the cheapest lodgings, running out of money, not being able to afford to eat 3 meals a day. Like it made him very, very human. And eating potatoes instead of rice, like he complained a lot about this, like potatoes for every meal. And this is actually how he ended up living in Wilhelmsfeld with Pastor Ulrich, who was running a rectorate? No, what do you call it? A vicarage, yeah, over there for cheap lodgings. But yeah, so to me, like, also as a Filipino living in Vienna, like this really hit hard. Like, yes, so Rizal was also kind of a little bit displaced and feeling his way around a new place, trying to see where he could fit in, trying to figure out which space he was in. And became also very clear while I was in the Augenklinik and trying to do research. How I started doing research was I actually started reading medical journals from the time he was here, so 1886, to see what the science was like during that time. And it was very interesting. It led me to questions like, was Rizal even a good eye doctor? Nobody knows, really. Like, there's myths about him being fantastic, almost like, almost like a miracle worker. But if you talk to, there's a well-known Rizal historian, Ambeto Campo. Actually, he failed to remove his mother's one eye. She had cataracts in both eyes. So one eye was successfully restored, the other not so much, but more because the patient was his mother. And she wouldn't stay in bed and she wouldn't do as the doctor said, was the story. But who knows, So there was one successful eye done, one failed eye. But yeah, so there's nothing to attest to how good of a doctor he was. There is definitely traces to attest to how good of a writer he was because his books live on. Yes, but this diasporic side of Rizal really touched me. And I think this was a good way to be able to sort of see him from a more human perspective and then be able to deal with his time here instead of him as a symbol for nationhood. And yeah, being this monument that he is, right? Yeah.
Thank you. And the other element that the viewers, the public would notice in the exhibition is the attentiveness to nature. No? So in your case, the tropical pavilion has this sense of humidity, right? That you make the person who enters, make him or her feel that humidity. And in the case of Joscha, the backdrop of the performance is a forest. So was this, in your thinking, doing the project, was like this natural element important to you to access, like in relation to like this extraordinary human being, no? Rizal, in relation to also an overwhelming natural context. Yeah.
For me, the part of the nature was crucial because the communities that I met, they are placed in very beautiful nature. So I think also the history of this community is coming from a more animistic belief than through the Spaniards, this Roman Catholicism that dropped over and then reworked again afterwards. And I think that personally for me it's just a very, very inspiring and beautiful place to be in this forest. And it was also clear that this shoot has to happen there where they live. And it was not planned in that sense. It was just a logical step to me. And of course, in this exhibition, I like the connecting part of the soil, that we are both using the same soil for this for the installation here and there. And I think that's what I would say, why this nature part comes into play for me.
For me, it actually came from the diasporic perspective, because my question was, how do I make people feel like they can access the Philippines without being there? Like, can I make something or a feeling of this come to life? So Joscha and I were talking about like how, especially in the Philippines or that part of Asia where we're near the equator, the air is so much denser and heavier. Like the humidity is real. Like, your hair really fizzes up from the humidity. And so how do you make that a body in the space? How do you kind of make that come to life? So that was kind of the starting point for this tropical pavilion, which we actually call the Dampfhaus. So it is quite there and present. And then the connecting point was, how do we make it feel like you're in this temperature, but then in the forest? So then the soil became another factor, yeah. But it really was about being able to be in a place, or bringing a sense of place, or having you kind of transport yourself to somewhere else for a little bit, yeah.
And I think it also complicates the space in the Kunstverein, because while the exhibition is inside, there is also this like some kind of liminal space outside, right? So it also I think contributes to the confusion of the place, like where this where is this happening, right? And it in a way implicates the institution in the infrastructure of the building, in the production of the exhibition, to make it like to render the limit of the institution, but also to carve out a space for a possibility that moves out of the premises. And I think the notion of the air, which translates to humidity, speaks well to the theme of the pavilion of the Philippines as guest of honor at the Buchmesse in 2025. So this is a shameless plug, but I think I have to put it in to bring all this together, because the air is present in this theme, like the imagination peoples the air, and that line actually comes from the novel of Jose Rizal, in the chapter that Joscha chose to present in his video. This is the chapter on Sisa, a mother who was abused by her husband, but also tormented by the loss of her children. So the Rizal describes a condition one night when Sisa was waiting for her children, and she was like, of course, anxious because they were not in the house. One was accused of theft, right, by the Spanish friar, and so so she was anxious, and she began to see things in her mind. No? And Rizal would describe this condition as some kind, like a fertile condition. The night is fertile, and it favors this experience in which the imagination peoples the air. So in Spanish, it's La imaginación puebla el aire. So as curator, I was struck by the verb poblar, which is to populate, but it translates to English as people. So I was interested in the connection between ecology and the human, the human context. So that is a good point of contact too, between the work of Stephanie with the Tropical Pavilion and the episode on Sisa, from which the theme, the imagination peoples the air, comes. Yeah. So maybe just to wrap this up before we open the conversation with the audience, how do you think this work of yours here in Oculus speak to the things you've been doing as artists? Like how does this, how can you situate this project within your practices in general?
For my part, I can say that my work normally centers around gaming communities that have a special relation to their avatars or to the gaming figures they are playing and the inscenation of it. And I started with wargaming communities in Russia, in US, and also Germany and Korea that try to inscenate themselves as the war hero, like a soldierly hero, and went on to computer communities, gaming communities, League of Legends, and Counter-Strike that have another sense of heroism that they glorify and that is essential for the games. And so to me, this having the chance to to work on this on this image of a hero and try to understand it, how it functions in not only in a game but for an entire society that is in this game. And you can't escape it, and you can't stop it. So I think this is for me the part that I would draw the line from my previous work into this one.
For me, I think that a lot of my work has always been, I guess I could use the word obsessed, with the diasporic condition. You know, like what is it to be an immigrant? What is it to be somebody not of a place when you have to kind of form an identity outside of what you know? So a lot of my work has dealt with that either through language, where I look at conditions of people growing up bilingual or multilingual, but not fluent in the language of the country they're in, you know, or taking that language and making it like a Creole of some kind, where you're switching back and forth between mother tongue and tongue that you've learned. And what does that become? Like, what is this in-betweenness, really? So that's kind of what I'm obsessed with. Like, what is it to have your feet kind of, or your toes in two different places and having to switch back and forth constantly? I think like it's a very Gloria Anzaldúa reference. This kind of, being of the borderlands, like not one place or the other, but always being stuck in between. And that condition always fascinates me. And I find that very much within diasporic communities and like the, immigrant condition. Yeah. So Rizal.
So thank you, Steph, and thank you, Joscha. Now if we have some members of the audience have a question, please feel free to direct your questions to the artists. So, anyone? Some kind of political theology, no? In Rizal's case, or some kind of like folk Catholicism that produced that mythified a human being to become some kind of rearticulation of Christ, no? in a particular community. In a way, it has like a millenarian dimension to it, like some kind of second coming, right? But do you have insights on that when you were there? Insights on how the community looked at Rizal?
I would say that what I think I understood, or what I learned, is that through the implementation of this Catholic religion, something happened there. And already in like 16th century, 1500 something, 40, 45, 50, there was a Filipino version of the Passion. So they directly transferred it from Jerusalem to the Philippines and made it their own thing. And we're waiting for the Savior to come, and Rizal is one of them, but there are many others. So if you browse through the interviews in one of the folders, you can see that there have been many before him, and they are still coming after him. So there is one community called Kingdom of God that calculates every 70 years reborn Christ. And they have all the names and places they have been born, and Rizal is just one of them in the line. And of course, it's to me it's fascinating to see what role a writer. I mean, he was also a doctor, educator, etc. But to me, somehow the closest I get to him is the writing. So I would refer to him as a writer, and how inspirational this is for these communities, and what kind of what they get out of it, and what they spread with these writings, and like the theater plays, the dances, the prayers they make out of it. It's really fascinating to see. And if I compare it, of course, with German national heroes, it's a bit frustrating. I mean, if I look at the Bismarck statue or something like this, I mean, this is very... I mean, how many poems did Bismarck write? I don't know any. I mean, this is so I envy you. Yeah. I don't know if this answered the question or could give a bit to the.
Other questions from
in my point of view, we are not talking about vision, but also about the perception of what we are seeing. Nowadays, we are living in really multicultural society. We are working, we are studying, and my question is, what do you think about the difference, about the culture, about the language we're talking, and how, in your point of view, those facts are connected to the perception of the view?
I'll try to parse, but I think that question is important because it speaks to cultural translation, especially when for Joscha, when you went to the Philippines, right? So you did research, and there was a bit of time that you spent, no? And trying to understand a very complex culture of a country that was colonized 3 times successively. I think it's the most colonized nation in the world, no? So the layers of cultural translation are also very dense, and so it's hard to in a way it's hard to exoticize the Philippines, which is good, no? Because it's cannot be quickly be like reduced to some kind of tradition or an ethnicity, for instance. So, but there is the challenge of the complexity, and you as someone who is from outside, so maybe that could be a good conversation on what was your experience with making sense of the cultural context that you were trying to mediate through your work. And also, Stephanie, when you came here, no, to study ophthalmology. I mean, not to study ophthalmology, but to study the archives on ophthalmology. It's a language that is different from, right? The scientific language is different from the language you speak as an artist. The kind of rationality or epistemology is different. So there would be translation too involved in that. So yeah, maybe that could be a good way to converse it. Yeah.
One element in terms of language and sound that for me editing these 3 channels with a language that I don't understand was interesting, because I had to work with the rhythm of the language and with the sounds of it more than with the meaning of it. And then again, when subtitling it in the end, of course I had the translation of the text before, it's like from the books that I was also reading, but I had to work with the language on a rhythmical base, I think, and this is also what the start of the movie kind of what drives you into the installation is also rhythm of the language. So maybe this could be something that unifies different languages or cultures, that you have like always the sonical experience and the beat and the rhythm that is in it.
For me, the experience of actually going into the medical journals from the 1800s was quite eye-opening, because I realized like medical journals before were always written in first person when the doctor writes something, and it reads like a diary. Like, when I went to work today on this patient so-and-so, like, you know, and of my 30 years of experience and something like 70 cases of this, like, you know, it's a very small sample when you think about it. And it's very practice-based. Like, it's a doctor speaking from years of experience, but not in a studied manner. When I say study, meaning like experimenting on like 200 people to get like, you know, it's a very different way science was conducted before than science is today. Like, I don't see, because I also had the chance to witness cataract extractions while I was at the Augenklinik. Like, Dr. Alfart actually let both of us enter the operating room to see how it's done today, which is really quite eye-opening and really, I mean, it's also very fascinating. Yes, that was a pun. But yes, and you know, after you remove the cataract, you have to implant a lens. And I can't imagine that lens not being tested, like going through rigorous testing before you're allowed to implant that into a human person nowadays. When they removed cataracts before, they would not implant lenses, because that was still like between 1886 and today, you know, many steps have occurred, but they would just take it out so your eye could heal itself and you would get glasses to be able to write that. You know, you couldn't see far anymore, but you could see close. So to me, that language was actually more accessible than reading scientific writing now, in a way, because I could relate it to how artistic practice is done, too, because a lot of this, when you talk about artistic research, actually has to come from a practice of doing. It can't just be that you read theory and say this is it, you know? Like, artistic research has to be grounded in practice for it to make sense and for it to be sensual. But it doesn't really answer your question to the change in perspective. I think for me, it was a lot of the perspectives I was trying to see was how being in Heidelberg may have impacted Rizal as a person and his interactions with people here, because we're talking about a Filipino in 1886 being the only person of color, probably within Heidelberg, being Catholic, being friends with a pastor who was Protestant, and living there, and all these interactions that came out of that. Like, the stories where he befriended a fraternity and he was actually hanging out in a bar with them, not knowing how to speak German, but speaking to them in French, because French was then the mode of. So it was like, how was it to be the only brown person in a bar at that point? And just these questions of like, because I can say that Heidelberg did influence Rizal politically. It was a lot with his interactions with Ulmer and having to translate, who was it, Schiller? Schiller, he translated William Tell into Tagalog, from German to Tagalog, so he could share it with his nieces and nephews. So this requires a sort of a change of perspective to be able to see the world from outside of the Spanish colonial framework and to see an environment that is running outside of these classist and very imperial regulations that may have been what he was living with in the Philippines, and just to see a different type of society. And that really does influence and change your perspective a lot. So I was trying to culturally parse that, also with my own experience, of course, living in Vienna. So.
And I think that based on research, like the Wilhelmsfeld, while it was like, it's a small town, but I think for Rizal, this is my interpretation, was for Rizal some kind of a cosmopolis, no? With Pastor Ulmer was supposed to be a progressive type of pastor, and he was also in conversation with a Catholic priest, and he took in Rizal from the Philippines into his home. So I think that kind of relationship within a small town would be a symptom of like a cosmopolitan context, and as Stephanie has mentioned, it might have instilled a different political consciousness in Rizal, to think of a cosmopolis beyond the colony, right? Yeah, and this is also, of course, brought about by the diasporic experience. So I think the cultural translation, I mean, while we don't directly hit the question, I think we were able to constellate some possible points of conversation that speak to the problem of language, and how the outsider or insider deal with the language game. Thank you. Yeah, more questions from anyone else? Yeah. Maybe just like one last question before we wrap up. There's a pressure for contemporary artists to render things, to find some kind of a political moment in the production of form. So we talked about ways of of aestheticizing, right? The research, translating research into exhibitionary form. But I'm interested in your thoughts on the political aspect of the project, of this project. If you were to be asked a process question of how you would create a political dimension on this or to this project, how would you respond to that? It's not a trick question, but it's a process question, because this is not to quickly recognize the political, but maybe to rethink it, like what it means to think of the project politically, yeah, not to impose a like a prefabricated political statement, but to speculate on how a project on Rizal could make us rethink the political. So that's my interest, rather than like, extracting a political statement from you on Rizal. So that is the interest of that question. I'm interested in that as a curator, because Rizal comes to you as a already politicized person, maybe almost overdetermined by his political history, right? But so I'm thinking, can we like distance ourselves from that political overdetermination, not to negate the political, but to rethink it through a different approach to Jose Rizal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me I think my relation to Rizal is kind of what is informing the works that I have made in this space. Not to say that it's... Because Rizal then becomes a stand-in for also how I see the Philippines, right? How I kind of see my nation as it's being identified, as it's being presented to the world, like, and Rizal kind of being one of the bricks of this nation-building identity. Like, how do I, as a Filipino, then connect to that? Do I connect to that? Like, what does it mean for me to claim a Filipino-ness outside of the Philippines? Like, what am I, really, outside of my country? And so a lot of it is actually re-examining, like, how I saw Rizal as a student in the Philippines, having to grow up with his mythology, and then seeing him now as a person who hopefully has gotten to know themselves better and is rethinking my relationship with my country. Like, how do I see this relationship? And I have to say, I felt more in touch with Rizal as an immigrant. Like, that to me made more sense, because it then kind of was able to break apart a very concrete idea of what Filipino-ness could be. If Rizal himself is a representation of that, and he was many things. Like, if you think about how he saw himself too within different spaces, then I think he stood for a multiplicity. Also an ability to be more than just one thing, right? And if identity could be seen as that way, it could be seen as complex and multiple, and not reducing people to just like a two-dimensional version of what they could be and what they should be, right? So it should be something that opens up different worlds and ideas of what one could become in relation to something. And it's a very important relation, I think, for somebody like me who's outside of it, what my relationship is to my country, because I do love it still. You know, it's still very much in me. Like, there's a definite feeling and a definite, embodied emotion when I think about the Philippines. But it's a very complex relationship too, yeah.
But there's also a suspicion of sight, no? Of appearance, right? And where does this suspicion come from, you think?
I think suspicion is, or maybe it's not a suspicion, but always this kind of move to destabilize you from thinking that it's only one thing. I think it is towards this ability to be able to see things in multiple ways, and to kind of shake you up a bit and say, what you're seeing isn't really what you're seeing. So it's kind of, hopefully, that's what it is.
Also a suspicion of representation, yes. Ultimately. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really add something to the political dimension or question.
If you answer this well, you become a Filipino.
Yeah. But okay, now the challenge is on. I think for me the foreground, or like the biggest part of the project, is this dimension of him being a portal in between these two places, in between Wilhelmsfeld and Philippines, for example, like going through this public representation, which is a political representation. I mean, this is like you're going to the book fair with him on the flag, basically. So it is you called him a pop star in the beginning, if I remember right. It has a massive political dimension, of course, that for me, I try to navigate around it to be able to establish a personal relation to his work somehow. So I can only get a glimpse of what is the real political dimension of it. So, but I have to say I'm thankful that it can play such a role, so that this project was possible also, in a sense maybe. But yeah, and what could I remember there was a question from in October already during the launching weekend. What we want to say about it, or what we want to say about Rizal, and I said I will not answer this question because this, this has to fail no matter what I say. And I think, looking back, I would say there is a sense of like creating something very beautiful, creating something full of hope in a time of terror, and like 300 years of Spanish colonization, total terror on the whole country. And somebody creates this piece of art out of it and can still influence further generations with it. So I think this is something we can also learn and politically use when we are like under threat. Somehow society is under threat, and how to still find these moments of beauty and give hope.
Thank you. I think on this note, on beauty and hope, we end this conversation. Stephanie and Joscha will be around, and we can have conversation with them even after the program. So thank you all for coming, and please enjoy the exhibition. Thank you.